What if I told you there was a driver who lived on the razor's edge? The kind who'd win on debut at Le Mans, test Formula 1 cars for McLaren, and still walk away from crashes that would make most people hang up their helmet forever? A man who wasn't born into a racing dynasty, but clawed his way up from a small Scottish town to the biggest stages in motorsport. He's been crowned champion, stripped of titles, launched into the air at 220 miles an hour, and still came back swinging. This is Allan McNish, the fearless racer who turned near disaster into career-defining glory. Allan McNish's story starts in a small Scottish town of Dumfries, and racing was already in the air at home. His parents loved bike racing, his dad ran a local garage called Cross Flags, and young Allan's first taste of competition was junior motocross. He had the speed, but there was a problem. The next class up used bigger bikes, and Allan was, well, still Allan-sized. His legs weren't long enough to reach the footrests, which meant he couldn't safely control the bike at full speed. So, with the bikes out of the picture, he swapped 2 wheels for 4 and discovered karting. And that's where things exploded. 6 Scottish junior kart titles, British junior champion, British senior champion. By 1985, he was 3rd in the world. And all this before he'd even touch a racing car. People inside the paddock already knew the name. With backing from Hugh Mackay of Ecuria Cos, McNish jumped into Formula Ford in 1987. His dad bought him a Van Diemen chassis, Duckham's came on as a sponsor, and the results came fast. McNish finished 2nd in the Dunlop Star of Tomorrow, 3rd in the Townsend Thorson, and 5th at the Formula Ford Festival. He'll tell you he didn't even enjoy the cars. No grip, as he put it, but that didn't stop Marlboro from signing him to their young driver program. In 1988, McNish started living with a certain Mika Hakkinen, and they would both go on to conquer the racing world. McNish took the British Formula Vauxhall Championship, while Hakkinen won the European version. He then won the Cellnet Award, basically the early version of the McLaren Autosport BRDC Young Driver of the Year, which earned him a seat in Formula 3 for 1989. That season was a dogfight. McNish in a West Surrey Ralt Honda, David Brabham in a Bowman Ralt VW, and protests were flying over each other's engines. But we'll come back to that in a second. At the finale, McNish was crowned champion, only to have the title stripped by an RAC court 4 months later and handed to Brabham. You see, both sides had lodged protests accusing the other of using engines outside the regulations. The protests and counter-protests dragged on for months, and eventually, the RAC court sided with Brabham's team. Still, McLaren's Ron Dennis saw something. He signed McNish as an F1 test driver on a 3-year deal, putting him in charge of developing Honda's V12 engine, which meant regular trips to Suzuka to pound around their test track while also racing in Formula 3000 with dams. In Formula 3000 back then, this was their latest proving ground before F1. You make it here, you have 1 foot in F1, but you fail here, and the ladder pretty much ends. And as you would imagine, his rookie F3000 season in 1990 started with, disaster. Yeah, not success. At Donington, starting from the back, McNish was carving through the pack when Emmanuel Naspetti moved across on the straight. The cars touched, and McNish's Lola launched into a horrifying series of cartwheels, over the retaining wall into a spectator area. The impact tore through the car apart, killing 1 spectator instantly.
4 people were hurt in the accident, 1 of them seriously, and he later died in hospital.
McNish was knocked unconscious for 2 minutes. When he came to, the shock hadn't fully set in, but the scene around him made it all too real. He was taken to the hospital where he was reunited with his father, who had been trackside watching his son's very first race of the season. McNish stayed overnight for observation, but the emotional weight of the accident hit harder than the physical injuries. A spectator had lost their life, and McNish was left wondering if he should ever race again. It was the victim's widow who told him not to let the tragedy end his career, a moment that shaped his decision to keep going. But this wouldn't be McNish's final car accident. Just a month later, he won the next round at Silverstone, then again at Brands Hatch, finishing the year 4th overall, just 1 point behind Eddie Irvine. But racing never stays still. In 1991, new radical tires changed the game, and Lola's short wheelbase chassis couldn't make them work. The results were miserable. Marlboro ended its young driver program, and McNish stayed in F3000 for 1992 with a better Reynard, but a viral infection wrecked his season. By 93, he was testing for Benetton and racing in F3000 alongside David Coulthard, taking a win at Nogaro, but finishing only 6th overall. By the mid-90s, the writing was on the wall. He could keep chasing a full-time F1 seat that might never come, or find another arena. That arena turned out to be endurance racing. In 1996, Porsche gave him a one-off drive during the British GP weekend, and they liked what they saw, so they signed him. 2 years later, he arrived for his first 24 hours of Le Mans. McNish won on his debut, sharing a Porsche 911 GT1 with Lauren Aiello and Stefan Ortelli. By 2000, he was with Audi, and the team would define his career. In their silver and red prototypes, he became the go-to man for speed you could hold hour after hour. Sebring, Petit Le Mans, and Le Mans podiums followed. Then, in 2002, the Formula One door finally opened. Toyota, entering the championship for the very first time, paired McNish with veteran Mika Salo. It was a massive opportunity, but also a gamble. Their car wasn't good enough. However, McNish, ever the fighter, dragged every ounce of performance from it, delivering solid finishes and earning respect for his sharp technical feedback. But in the early 2000s, reliability and outright pace meant everything, and points were painfully rare. The defining moment of that season came at Suzuka. In qualifying at one of the fastest corners in Formula One, McNish lost control. The Toyota slammed into the barriers with such force that it punched straight through the concrete wall, leaving a gaping hole in the structure. The car was obliterated. Somehow, McNish emerged with just bruises and a concussion. But the incident was the full stop on his rookie season and, as it turned out, on his Formula One career. Returning to Audi, McNish wasted no time reasserting himself. The wins came back in 2008. He conquered Le Mans again, this time in the diesel-powered Audi R10 TDI. He returned with a fearless commitment, but that commitment was a double-edged sword.
This is a massive crash, and this is Allan McNish in the Audi 3. Look at
that's McNish! That's Allan McNish!
June 11, 2011, the 79th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans had barely begun. The air over the Circuit de les Arts was electric with fans waiting for the first real blows in the Audi-Peugeot war. For years, the two marques had traded wins. Audi had arrived with a brand new weapon, the R18 TDI. Low-slung, aggressive with a narrow greenhouse and LED-lit eyes. Underneath, a 3.7-liter V6 turbo diesel sat inside a carbon fiber survival cell surrounded by crash structures that the team prayed they'd never need. McNish was starting the number 3 Audi with Tom Christensen and Ronaldo Dindo Capello sharing the driving duties. His mission in the opening stint was to attack immediately, grab track position, and make Peugeot uncomfortable from the very first lap. And McNish wasted no time. Within the first few laps, he had carved past teammate Timo Bernard to seize the overall lead. But Le Mans traffic doesn't wait for you to get comfortable. The slower GT classes, Porsches, Ferraris, Corvettes appeared behind. Only minutes into his lead, McNish approached the Dunlop Essence, a fast downhill sequence, and closed rapidly on a Ferrari 458 GTE driven by Anthony Beltoise. Up ahead, another Audi, driven by Mike Rockenfeller, was already threading through traffic. McNish saw an opening on the inside. As he committed to the move, the Ferrari edged back toward the racing line, and then the Audi's left front clipped the Ferrari's right side. The R18 was launched across the track, straight into the tire wall at the bottom of the hill. The angle and speed combined to fire McNish's car over the initial stack of tires and into the rigid Armco barrier behind it. The barrier caught the Audi and flipped it sideways in mid-air before it crashed back down on top of the tires. The crash tore the left front wheel assembly clean off, suspension still attached, and it sent sailing over the debris fence. It missed the corner workers by a matter of feet. From the grandstands, it looked catastrophic. Every big crash at Le Mans carries an echo of its darkest day, 1955. This one had all the hallmarks of disaster. Marshals converged on the wreck, cutting through bodywork and carbon shards, but somehow McNish was conscious.
If I'm very frank with you, the crash I had at Le Mans, not for my personal safety, but for the safety of the other people that were very close by, the marshals and the photographers, that shook me a little bit. That one really did. That one shook me a little bit.
With help, he climbed from what was left of the Audi, helmet still on, taking in the wreckage that seconds earlier had been a state-of-the-art race car. Repairs to the wall took over an hour. The safety car led the field past the scene at walking pace as marshals rebuilt barriers and swept fragments from the track. McNish was taken first to the circuit's medical center, then to a nearby hospital for scans. The diagnosis was a sore lower back, a grazed chin, and that was it. From the outside, it looked like the kind of crash that ends a season. Instead, McNish was back on his feet in days. The recovery plan was kinda straightforward. Medical checks, light training, then long hours in Audi simulator. The sim runs recreated the same traffic situations, frame by frame, so he could get his timing and judgment back without risking a car on track. Inside Audi, engineers pulled every bit of data from the car. They checked the carbon fiber safety cell for any flecks or cracks. It had done its job perfectly. They also looked at how the tire wall and barrier took the hit, learning exactly how the speed had been taken out of the car before the final stop. Those lessons went straight into upgrades. Meanwhile, Audi's PR team called it a racing incident and a win for safety. Ultimately, the man himself spoke on the crash.
And that was really comforting because I hadn't seen the accident. But when I saw the ferocity of the accident, it made me very thankful. First of all, I was in an Audi and it was strong, and so the guys that designed it did a bloody good job. Also very, very relieved that there was no other injuries apart from what I was involved in, because I saw the people at the side of the track, and that was a lot of luck, I have to say, and it made my heart stop when I saw that as well.
But not everyone was convinced. Headlines asked if McNish had lost his nerve. Fans argued whether he'd be the same in traffic. Every lap in testing that summer was compared to his pre-crash pace. Weeks later, he answered the questions on track. At Silverstone, he was back on the podium. At Petit Le Mans, his stints kept Audi in the fight against tough competition. By 2012, Audi rolled out the hybrid R18 e-tron Quattro. McNish and teammates Tom Christensen and Dindo Capello adopted fast, winning first time out at Sebring. They finished second at Le Mans, with the crash now just another story from a career that refused to slow down. By 2013, the arc of the comeback was almost complete. Capello had stepped away, replaced by Loic Duval, joining McNish and Christensen in the number 2 Audi R18 e-tron Quattro. It was a new lineup, but one with instant chemistry. They opened the WEC season at Silverstone with a win, then backed it up with another at Spa-Francorchamps. A second place at the tight, bumpy Interlagos kept the momentum alive, and by the time they arrived at Austin for round 4, the number 2 crew were clearly the team to beat. A controlled, mistake-free run in Texas brought another podium, stretching their lead in the standings. Fuji came next, which was a rain-soaked weekend that ended in a win after the race was cut short, giving them a buffer going into the final 2 rounds. The title went down in Shanghai. A solid points finish there would seal the championship, but McNish didn't back off. He and his teammates attacked from the start, running at the front all day. When the checkered flag dropped, the number 2 crew had not only won the race, but clinched both the drivers' and manufacturers' championships. The celebrations in the pit lane were loud, and for McNish, it was the perfect high point. 2 years earlier, he'd been crawling out of a destroyed car. Now, he was leaving as a world champion. The difference between 2011 and 2013 was clear. He'd become a leader in the garage, mentoring Duval, managing risk in traffic, and taking the role of the one trusted to deliver in the final stint. Then, at the end of 2013, McNish announced his retirement.
After 32 years of motorsport and 11 years with Audi Sport, then finally, when winning the World Championship, having a third Le Mans victory in our pocket this year, felt it was the right time to take one step back, to hand the steering wheel to the next generation and to retire.
McNish wasn't retiring from motorsport, only from driving. His passion for the sport was very much alive.
But the time's right now for me just to take that step back, to move into different roles, and to be able to support my colleagues, my teammates, in making sure that the success continues for them.
Soon after, he moved into team management with Audi's Formula E program, mentoring young drivers and applying the same clear-cut decision-making he'd shown behind the wheel. He also stepped into broadcasting, becoming a sharp, sometimes blunt voice for BBC and Formula One coverage. Even without a helmet on, McNish remained firmly rooted in the paddock. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the craziest GT1 cheats. Trust me, you won't look at that era the same way again.